inspiring to like other small countries out there. But there's more to it than some big underdog story. It's actually a proper football culture of producing top players.
The impressive part, I guess, was when you see how royal they were afterwards, but they managed to keep their heads for the 30 minutes. There'll be celebrations for the heroes of Argentina or Croatia tonight as the M&Ms of Messi and Modric aim for the bounty of a World Cup final. But which star will provide the sweetest moment when it comes to the crunch? Dan, 4 games left. First time in a long time there's been just one game on in a day. It should be a good one.
I mean, I just can't let that introduction pass. I mean,
that's you'd have to.
That's it's just celebrations.
A reminder to bring home sweets. That's the reminder, basically.
I don't know. It's Christmas. Like it's sort of. I did see a Christmas tree in someone's house earlier. I was doing a piece with Richie Partridge. It'll be something to look out for later in the week.
Another Christmas call.
Yeah, there you go. He was in a pear tree, obviously at the time, and he obviously ex-Liverpool physio, ex-Ireland winger, and underage started. He's working over here now. So there was a Christmas tree in his house, but I must admit, like it's the alternate universe here. Although the weather's cooled a bit, like you're sort of getting these reports from home of like icy conditions and serious conditions, and and you're out here in a sort of just a permanent sort of warmth, really. It's a little bit cooler the last couple of days. It gets dark every evening around 5 o'clock, so maybe there's something about that. But even just chatting to even Richie Partridge for the piece, like, I mean, the contrast is a lot of the locals just a lot of the expats here, who have the means to do it, will just not stay here in the months of July and August. It's because it's so warm. So but yeah, there's Christmas is happening. I'm sort of I'm going to be thrust back into it next week. But anyway, that's a complete tangent. Argentina Croatia will
Messi.
be, yeah. Well, there you go. I assume it is. Yeah, this is, to be honest, this is often a messy time of year in Dublin, so it can be a messy time of year over here potentially as well. I mean, like I am looking forward to this game. Looking forward to both of them actually. And maybe there's a sort of there's atmospheric reasons for that as well too. Like there's no doubt that there's 2 home ties for Argentina and Morocco basically. But yeah, Lusail back to Lusail, where the final venue as well. It's probably something like one of the things. Obviously, a lot of the stadiums look the same to everyone, probably in some ways. But Lusail, where the final is going to be, I had a piece in Monday's paper with Kieran Kelly, the ex-Sligo Rovers goalkeeper, saved all those penalties in the shootouts for Sligo Rovers in 2010-2011, who now is involved with a club called Lusail Sports Club, who have plans to maybe play their games in the stadium going forward. They're actually taking the top tier off it when the competition finishes. But it's an amazing venue. But Lusail is the place where apparently they want, like within Qatar, they want Lusail to be like the capital of the future, that maybe in a period of time the capital of Qatar won't be Doha, it'll be Lusail. It's like their future city, and this is a venue, if they're going to probably go for the Olympics and other big events, like Lusail is this is the one. It's the jewel in the crown. I think a lot of the financial institutions are moving there, and quite noticeably during this competition, they've had a lot of premium games in Lusail, and this is all part of the plan. Like Portugal were there a bit with Ronaldo. Argentina's first 2 games were there, and the side of the draw they're on, their quarterfinal and semi-final is there too. In the same way that England were due to be up in Al Bayt, which is a little bit more remote, and there certainly is a theory that maybe the travel time might have affected the boisterousness levels of any England fans if they were having a couple of drinks, which was sort of redundant anyway. But that's part of the thinking apparently behind them being on that side of the draw. And now the Morocco fans will have to venture up there, but it is Lusail, a place where they've wanted to have a lot of the stars, and it is this incredible backdrop now to Argentina's campaign. Like it's where they lost to Saudi Arabia. It's where they got things back on track against Mexico, and then the Dutch game, and now again back to Lusail to play Croatia. And I mean, I was not quite in the Argentina press conference today. I was sort of around the venue because it was very, very packed, and you just watching it on the screen outside. It's still like the prevailing accent around the place, I suppose, is that of, Spanish-speaking Argentines, and the TV stations and the networks, and the sort of buzz and the entourage that follows them. Like they are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Feels like they've had a lot of emotion in those games that you go through. I mean, the Saudi game was obviously the first real big shock. The Mexico game got them, really got them back on track. The Australia game, most people thought they'd struck gold, if you like, of drawing Australia. And in the end, there was two players on the ground hugging Emi Martinez. That after I think he made a good save at the finish to get them through. It feels like a long time ago now. And then the Dutch game, obviously 2-0 up, game was over, and suddenly it's all sorts of chaos ensues then for the next sort of 45 minutes. It's hard to know whether that emotional toil that they've been through, if they can keep that going for another two games that are going to be hugely emotional, if they get through, or whether it's a case that that's the sort of momentum that they'll thrive on. That kind of, they might not, if you like, tactically or technically be as strong as, say, the likes of Spain or even of France, but there might be that kind of X factor of emotion that brings them through, particularly obviously in the wake of Maradona's death, and with the amount of support that they have there, which, I mean, probably only rivals Morocco in terms of the, being carried along in a wave of support in Qatar.
Yeah, I mean, but they seem to embrace it in a way. Like even Messi after the game the other day, was asked a question about Maradona, or it came up anyway, after the Holland game. And he was basically talking about, like, I've no doubt Diego was looking down on us and, carrying us along, and, almost delivering the headline, I'm guessing, for a lot of the, for a lot of their publications and radio stations and so on. Yeah, I mean, I think there is an element of, is this from a skeptical position? There's a sense of, is this healthy? Surely this catches up with you at a period of time. But I guess the counterpoint to that is that even after everything that happened in the two concessions against Holland, and I probably made this point over the weekend, they did finish extra time pretty strongly. That in terms of on the pitch, they sustained like the most awful gut punch you could probably sustain, that often like breaks a team, and they bounced out of it still and finished and even held their nerve in the penalties. Like we've spoken about how Brazil were probably done going into the penalties, just the circumstances they ended up in it. Ghana, Uruguay, historic games where we feel like we know what's going to happen in the shootout because of how they got there. As much as maybe the Dutch dropped off a little bit in extra time and were a bit more passive from a position where they were, they had something going. I think Argentina obviously played their part in that as well too. And maybe they are like they're absorbing it in a healthy way. Whereas, I mean, 4 years ago, they got hammered by Croatia, ironically enough. Squeezed through in the groups in the last game, and played this epic 4-3 game against France, who turned out to be the winners. Like they seem to feed off it, in a way. But in saying that, like, they lost their heads a little bit too in the Holland match, and there was a loss of discipline, but they managed to sort of regain it. They're a hard side to assess for me. Like, is Messi carrying them like Maradona did in '86 to a degree? He probably is. But have some of the players stepped up around this tournament and elevated themselves? They probably have, in terms of like Alvarez and Martinez, and sorry, even Alexis McAllister. A couple of like responded to the challenge. So, I don't know. Well, do you think they're good? Like, this is a very sort of redundant, basic question. Like,
It's
are they a good side? This is the big question. And sorry, Enzo Fernandez, of course, what I was thinking of there. Sorry, yeah, I mean, obviously
yeah.
Martinez is the keeper, but
I,
yeah.
I'm not sure there's a like if you take the way France played against England, I think France are one of the very few sides in the competition who could have played, who could have been on the back foot as much as they were against a good team and still come out on top and win. I think Argentina have almost been the opposite, where they have been, ahead in games. They should have had Saudi Arabia put away, did a lot of offside goals, etc. But they should have had Saudi Arabia put away. Poland was one of the worst performances I've seen in the whole tournament. They were good against Mexico. Again, Australia should have had them put to bed, gave them a chance. The Dutch definitely should have had the game over. I just think if it's Croatia, I have a feeling that I don't think that Croatia will let them back into it. I think if they step off the pace in the way they did against Australia or the way they did against Holland, I think they'll get punished for it. Now, that probably comes down to not having, a 31-year-old Messi or a 28-year-old Messi. That's possibly the difference. He can still have moments in games, but I don't think there's the depth there that there would be with France. But again, they're a team that look like they will decide things on moments. They're not gonna dominate, I don't think, a semi-final and potentially a final in possession. I think they're gonna leave it up to Messi or the players around them to produce moments. So, I mean, are they good? Obviously, they're good in terms of they've got further than 28 other teams. But it's a very, very difficult one to judge. And you see how roiled they were by the referee, which was rather perplexing at the Dutch game. I thought he was a dreadful referee, but I didn't think he was pro Holland.
Sent home now, I see.
Again,
Sent home.
Yeah. But they kept the impressive part, I guess, when you see how royal they were afterwards. But they managed to keep their heads for the 30 minutes. And as you say, there's a lot of teams that would have just gone under in a rage of, poor me and the refs against us and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't do that. So that will definitely stand to them in this game. I'm just not sure they're going to be ruthless enough to finish it off.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, if you stop the game at 70 minutes against Holland, like, what do you say about them at that stage? Like, it actually looked like they were pressing on and doing it. And it shakes the confidence of them. And we'll talk about Croatia maybe after a bit of a break, but I suppose it's very hard to talk about the game without spitting into like an analysis of both sides. How to Croatia play it as well too. I mean, they look at sort of ways in which other teams have got joy, and you're thinking, okay, let's not be afraid to sort of be a little bit direct in our approach in our times, and let's just really make sure resolve to not to show too much respect here and really ask questions of this defense every time that we possibly can, and like that's the thing. I think it's probably another thing about these tournaments as well is that, like, you do have to sort of factor in like the time the teams are spending together and the times they had prior to the competition, that they had that small build up, like a real shorter build up, and that like teams can change and get better through the competition too. Like they spent more time around each other. That maybe like the bad 20 minutes against Holland is a great thing that they've been able to sit down and analyze it over the last few days and say, okay, how did this happen? Like, is this something that we need to like address? And like, because we don't see a huge amount of these teams, that we watch them, we make a judgment on them, then assume like 4 days later that they're going to be the same. Whereas obviously there's still time that they can do it. I know the turnarounds are pretty tight. Something Argentina were complaining about earlier on in the competition. But I mean, there still is time to review and improve, and they never spend this much time together really, than they do now. And this is where like some teams absolutely thrive. And like for some teams like Morocco have found something that works, so it's great. They probably don't have to do a huge amount of structural stuff other than probably research of the opponent. Whereas Argentina like have some decent raw materials to work with, but maybe like this is the test of Scaloni now in terms of like he changed the shape for the Dutch game to match them a bit. So they've like had a little formation change around that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they do for this game again? And maybe they'll find something that that's better, rather than their sort of their level being sort of fixed, And so like
Yeah.
maybe at the moment they don't look like a great side, but it's actually a case that the greatness could be found now. Like I mean, in 2018, like France weren't very good in the groups. They conceded 3 goals to Argentina in the round of 16,
Mm-hmm.
and which was a bit of a chaotic game. And it was then that they stepped up and they started to sort of 1-0 it a bit, and
Yeah.
eventually sort of won the final. So maybe there is another gear with this Argentina side as well, like that will come to the fore, and the fact that a couple of the younger players that are supporting Messi are in the younger bracket. I mean that could be the positive slant on it.
So then you've seen Croatia. Have you seen every game of them in this World Cup? You've
Apart from the
seen quite a
Brazil
lot
game,
of,
apart from the
apart
Brazil
from the
game.
Brazil game, of course. Yeah, yeah. Look, their group again. In retrospect, you talk about when you look back, the group was probably stronger than we gave it credit for when we were previewing the tournament. But again, like they were probably if Lukaku had been slightly match fit, they could have been gone. They might not get out of the group. It's one of those sort of strange sliding door moments that I think a lot of teams that go on to win World Cups have during the course of the tournament.
Yeah, like they nearly had a meltdown in the last 20 minutes of that Belgium game. Yeah, there was a few little disagreements and things, but they got through it. I suppose the thing about them is like Argentina has been a roller coaster of emotion, and very visible, like we spoke about earlier. Like how do they exist on that sort of the energy of everything, the exhilaration. Whereas Croatia, it's more a little bit flatline, even though they've been through like the mill, like they've been through two
Mm-hmm.
penalty shootouts, and they've been through like all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's as taxing for them, and maybe
Yeah.
it is, but it's almost as though they've been here before, although it's actually only a quarter of the squad were in Russia 4 years ago. But there's some important members within that. Um, that there is a sort of a just that sense of this is what we do. We
Mm-hmm.
come to the fore in these scenarios and we can cope. But I was so impressed by how they responded to the quarterfinals. Like their form had been moderate enough in their previous 2 games. Even listening at the press conference ahead of the game, like Perisic was saying, a lot of you guys, presumably the Croatian media, like were critical after the Morocco game. That seemed to be the inference, like
Mm-hmm.
an unremarkable nil all. And he's sort of saying, look at it now. It doesn't look that bad now, and
Yeah.
that's certainly a chat. Like I heard sort of I think the Canadians who were obviously knocked out. I think in their research at the start of the competition, like they had sort of category of players. The tier one players would be, in their eyes, would be players playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe. And I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
pointed out that Morocco, I think, had 10 in their squad or something like that, and
Yeah.
quite a large number in their version of tier two. So, but anyway, that seems to be the Croatian line. But I mean, they are a great story. I mean, you step back from it. I'm sort of writing a bit about this for the piece for Tuesday's paper. Like, is there lessons we learned from Croatia? Like, what can you learn from this? And even Dalic, their coach, was sort of talking today about being inspiring to like other small countries out there,
Mm-hmm.
and showing that you can achieve your dreams. But that it's there's more to it than some big underdog story. It's actually like a culture, a proper football culture of producing top players. Most of them
Yeah.
have come through Dynamo Zagreb. I was looking earlier on at the profile of the squad, and if you were sort of a Dynamo Zagreb fan in the late 2000s to sort of early 2010s, so you see Modric come through and leave, then you see Kovacic come through and leave, then you see Brozovic come through and leave. Lovren had been
Mm-hmm.
there a bit earlier on as well. Um, the sheer volume of players that have like come through that club in particular, and then you wonder, like a lot of them overlapped with each other, and then you probably ask yourself, why do they have this unity and this sort of durability that comes um, with international football knockout tournament? And yes,
Mhm.
there will be teams here where lads played each other with underage all the way up, at a certain level. But I think in Croatia it's particularly pronounced because so many of them would have played club football together at a particular
Yeah.
level and would know each other going back a long way. And that's why their football culture is maybe so far advanced. It's the one super club academy is very much to the fore and why they're thriving as they are.
Yeah, I think like I'm right in saying that this is since 1998. This is their third World Cup semi-final.
Yeah,
They went through and won, finished third, which for a country of their size, I think that's 3 out of 7. That'd be right.
yeah,
Three out of
it's
seven
correct. Yeah,
tournaments that they've entered. Like, and when you consider, I mean, England in that period have made, I think, one World Cup semi-final. Italy made one World Cup semi-final. I think Spain only made one World Cup semi-final as well, albeit Italy and Spain went on to win it in that time. I think I'm right in saying it. So like their consistency is phenomenal for a small country. And look, they've got players there that would grace would grace any country. And they just they're a phenomenal story. And I think that sense of belief, I think that comes in I know there's 4 million people, but it's a close knit. It's a close knit country in terms of what they went through.
it's history.
In its history, without being kind of blasé about it. Like that certainly creates a mentality that you can't create that. You can't magically create that kind of mentality, albeit a horrific thing to go through, obviously to create it. But like in a football sense, and in this tournament, they haven't lit it up. I mean, they've had four draws out of 6 games. If you take the 90 minutes, two penalty shootouts, 2 draws in the group stages, and a 4-1 win over Canada. It's not something that you'd say on a form line that you'd be screaming for them that they'd be favourites or would even have any chance against Argentina. But the way they reacted against Brazil, the way they held out, and the class they showed to create, it wasn't just that one chance they created. I can't remember who missed the chance I think it was in the first period of extra time, where before Neymar scored, where they had a chance to go 1-0 up. But there's certainly moments that they can create. I'm trying to come down on one side or the other, and every time I think about it, the next thought I have is for the other team. So it's just one of those kind of weird things when you're trying to give a verdict. I think ultimately I'm probably coming down on Croatia's side.
Right.
But
Okay.
if I'm talking to myself in the morning, as I tend to do, I might end up to be Argentina. But there's just something about the Croatian team that I don't see it being a thriller. I think it'll be 0-0 or 1-0 after 70 minutes either way. And at that stage, I just think I can't see Croatia running out of legs as I thought they would against Japan. And having gone through the 2 hours against Japan, 2 hours against Brazil, I just think that resilience that they have shown in this tournament, I think the resilience that Croatia have shown, combined with the kind of lack of killer instinct in Argentina, is probably the reason why I'm coming down on the side of Croatia.
Yeah, I can see that view. I mean, like you can look at their draws stat positively or negatively. Like in the context of knockout football, another draw takes them, takes them to extra time and the distance, and that's what you do to survive. I feel like I'm leaning towards Argentina, but I'm struggling to explain really the reasons why. I mean, maybe it's just the energy of the venue. Maybe it's the fact that Messi still is in very good form. He still is in exceptionally good form, and particularly he has the ability. Like the Croatian midfield is very very good, and but Modric has a bit of freedom within that. Can Messi sort of occupy them, and who does that upset Brozovic, or what way does it happen? How do they deal with that? They still sort of the Lovren Guardiola partnership is a decent one, but not a perfect one either.
Mm-hmm.
even little things Argentina, like the squad involvement in the last one, even Lautaro getting on to score the winning penalty, having failed to score earlier in the tournament. If he gave them something off the bench as well, Alvarez can maybe ask a couple of questions of Lovren and try and pull them out of shape. I lean towards Argentina, but not with a strong conviction. Maybe I'm just like it is. You're very influenced by the fact that it's just going to be a complete cauldron of Argentina fans. I know Croatia will revel in silencing them and doing that, but I just wonder if Argentina can start well, will they just be able to eke it out? Because Croatia, for all their good play, they still they don't necessarily have an outstanding striker either, and Argentina do have outstanding forward players, and maybe that might just tip it.
Well, then we'll be back tomorrow with reaction to the match, and hope you enjoy the game. We'll have a preview of Morocco's clash with France as well. That was in the World Cup. Watch us on YouTube or independent.ie, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.